Hi, long range hunting. Welcome back to episode 36 of our terminal ballistic testing, hunting versus match bullets. Now, welcome back. Today we are covering the Apex Afterburners. Now, this is a monolithic bullet. It is a tipped one with an aluminum tip. This is a bullet that is designed to shed its petals, and the shank continues, which basically you have big pieces come off of those petals. They expand, break off, and then continue through, and then the shank is continuing through. Now, as everybody who watches knows, I am not a fan of that design. That is a design that is just wrought with issues. It is one of those things that I really don't like it. I've seen so many issues with it, especially with hammer bullets. That is one of the worst bullets out there. That's one of those bullets. There are some that are successful, like Lehigh Defense, but those are in a whole different category. With this, it's just a small part of the projectile that is actually breaking off, and then the majority of that shank is continuing through. With Lehigh Defense, it's a little bit different. You're having a little bit of that bullet left, and what you're doing is you're having those massive petals open up and break off, and so you have giant chunks coming out, and it's basically, for people. It's mainly defense stuff, so it's short penetration, massive wounding, massive pieces. So basically, you turn it into buckshot. So Lehigh Defense is in a whole nother thing, but this is a bullet that I was, interested to test. It's designed differently than bullets like the hammer, and I wanted to see how they do. Now, I ordered these. The one downside of them right away, as soon as you order them, is they are expensive. So you're looking at about $200 per 100 bullets, and that's not loaded. That's just for reloading. So like any monolithic bullet, it's expensive. Now, these seem to be engineered a little bit better with the design. And also, with any projectile, I like to do my research. That includes reaching out to the actual owner if possible, or an employee, or just simply researching. On this one, I was able to contact Mark, the owner, had a lot of in-depth conversations with him about this, and he was very curious to see what kind of results I got. And so we took him into the field, and we wanted to test him out. So let's go to the field real quick, and then we'll talk about it afterwards. All right, guys, we're on test number 2. We're going to be doing the Apex Afterburners. It's a monolithic tipped bullet. We're shooting it out of the 308 today. It's a 135 grain projectile coming out at 3,019 feet per second out of the 308. So it's cooking. We could actually get it quite a bit higher than that, but that's just what we're doing. We're at 100 yards right now, shooting off the tripod, and we're gonna have some fun with it. Okay. All right. Let's see here. I definitely hit it. All right, now this is kind of milky on some of this, but from what we're seeing here, you have a pretty decent wound cavity for what it is. You can see that the petals did shed. Once you get towards the exit, though, towards the end of the block, it pretty much disappears. Unfortunately, that's the problem with bullets like this, where it's designed to shed, and your main wound cavity is going to be until it's really down to the shank itself, and then the shank continues, which is 3/4 of the way down the block. Which, if this is a whitetail, it'd be through that whitetail at this point. We'll have to see if we captured the shank anywhere in here. We'll have to dive through and take a look at these, but it definitely penetrated all the way through and caused decent damage. Once I get back, we'll along with the other block, we'll get this cleaned up and take a look at it and get everything measured and watch the video on the energy transfer, and we'll go from there. What do you guys think? Good
Beautiful.
time?
Good times. Good times.
I ain't at work today.
Yeah. Surprising results of the muzzle loader, and well, confirmed what you
Yeah, well,
had
that's
already
what I
experienced.
saw. I mean,
And now trying this is a new bullet. This is the first time testing it. Shot decent when I did my part, and be curious to push this faster and take it out to distance, see how it does. So
Well, that's definitely, in my opinion, that's a dead deer for sure.
oh yeah, it's a dead
Yeah,
animal.
he ain't walking away from
For that type of bullet, this is one of the better performances
Yeah.
I've seen for
Yeah.
this type of projectile. Just that in part, that's to be expected,
Right.
but a lot better on this than some of the other designs that I've seen.
Yeah.
Now, a few things to talk about. You can see that there is a long wound cavity through there, but towards the end of that wound cavity, it's really nothing. And what that is that shank continuing through. If you look at the temporary wound cavity, you can see that there's these kind of lumps going around. Those are the petals. And realistically, the way that bullets like this, Hammer and Apex, are marketed is that you have the petals shed, you have that initial, and then that shank is continuing through, and basically the front part of the shank is shaped more flat, and so you get displacement. That's great in theory, but reality is something completely different. So if you look at the majority of that wounding, it is actually from the initial. So you get that initial expansion, and once those break off, they're continuing through. But once those stop and you get to the shank, the wound cavity is pretty much non-existent. If you look at the video, you can see the actual shank go completely through. That went through 4 feet of ballistics gel. And managed to continue straight, which I'll cover in a second. That's actually pretty impressive, just the fact that it stayed straight. But I actually had to go back and look at that footage to find out where it went, because there was so little wounding. At the last part of the gel block, you can see there's almost nothing there. And that's the way it was. Now, these catch blocks had already been shot, but you can see from the footage, it actually travels above those. And so I actually had to watch the footage and then go back and look at the catch blocks in order to tell where it went, because the wounding was so small. So the reality of that shank causing damage is really not something that I find as believable, and nothing more than marketing. Now, people can disagree if they want, but the results speak for themselves. So what a lot of people are seeing, they get good results with this type of bullet when it's well designed and it's at a higher velocity. But if you look at it, the majority of that wounding, what they're seeing in that animal, they haven't got to the point where that shank is continuing through most of the time. Generally speaking, they're going to just see the wounding like you see where the petals are. And then it's either exiting with those, or the shank is just exiting the opposite side, and they're just seeing that wound cavity. They're not shooting deep enough into an animal in order to actually see how little damage the shank is doing. Now, I talked about the shank traveling straight and why that's impressive. A lot of these bullets, because you're not getting shoulder stabilization. Now, I talked about that in the last video, and basically what it is you have that bullet expanded, and as it's expanded, there is tissue going over it and catching the back of the bullet, and so it's keeping it from coming out. There's a really great Gunworks video on it that I'm going to show you guys real quick, just because it's excellent example of that, and I'm going to tag that link in the video below. This is from Gunworks, not my video, but great way to explain it.
When a bullet impacts a vital target, it is no longer stabilized by spinning. The target medium is much more dense than air and would require an impossible increase in spin rate to maintain point-forward flight. Fortunately, bullets are designed to mushroom on impact. The new shape of the bullet causes high-velocity displacement of tissue and wound cavities larger than bullet diameter. The forces on the front of the bullet maintain a balance for straight-line penetration called shoulder stabilization. Additional stabilization is added by the balancing of forces caused by tissue moving past the body of the bullet. The initial shape of the bullet is dependent on bullet design and impact velocity, two very important factors in terminal performance.
So now that you've watched that and you understand what I'm talking about with shoulder stabilization, when you have just a shank, you cannot achieve that same thing. It's just like shooting a full metal jacket or a bullet doesn't expand. And so you have a high probability of that bullet doing what's called necking over, which is that bullet is going to start to move and it's going to either start tumbling, changing directions, or both. So it can really be a problem. That's something you see commonly with hammer bullets. I see it all the time. Those shanks or the bullets, or if they do actually perform as designed, those shanks are changing directions, doing funky things. There's a lot of issues that can happen. So the fact that it penetrated all the way through is something that's pretty impressive. It kept a relatively straight path through that much gel and hitting multiple blocks. But again, there was no real wounding there to begin with. Now, I mentioned that to Mark when I talked to him, and he said, that's how they engineered it to travel straight, and it is consistent from his experience. Now, I don't have that type of experience with it, and I'm going to have to continue to test these, which I've got the bullets to do it, and I'm going to continue to test, but I cannot say for sure that that is a consistent thing. So as we keep going, we'll learn more about these bullets and see if they are. This is a very new bullet, so there's not a whole lot of data out there. Now, Mark was nice enough to send me some examples of terminal ballistics so I could study that. And then I also have a buddy. I'm going to link the video here for you guys to check out. But it was his experience with actually using them on deer. So you'll have my video with the gel block, and then you can check out Aaron's video and see it on deer, and then you can compare and see how it does. So ultimately, I'm not a fan of this type of bullet. Everybody knows that. There are so many issues that can go into it if it's not done properly and designed right. But out of this type of bullet, to where the front part of that is designed to shed off and that shank continues, this is definitely the best I've tested or seen. There's several of them out there. The worst is hammer. The best so far is Apex. So I'm not going to say these things are incredible. The impact velocity was 2,800 feet per second. And if you took something like an ELD match or something like that at that same velocity, you'd have triple the size of wounding. It did have a decent energy transfer for the type of projectile, but again, once you lose those pedals and you lose that displacement, it just really doesn't do anything. So we'll continue to test this. It's a very curious bullet. I really liked talking with Mark. Very nice, professional guy, able to answer questions, very smart, intelligent. He knows what he's doing. I'm just not personally buying into the whole shank thing. As far as do they work? Yes, they will kill. How reliably? That is to be seen, because I've seen issues with these bullets. But I'm going to continue test, and so far from what I've seen, these have been consistent from other people's results, and that's from credible people that know what they're doing and know what they're talking about. So it'll be interesting to push forward with these projectiles. I did shoot them, and I started out at the bare minimum for this 308. It's a 135 grain Apex Afterburner, and it's coming out at just over 3,000 feet per second. That is the minimum load for that powder, so I wasn't even pushing them yet. Shot it 100 yards, and even though I hadn't, played with accuracy nodes or anything, it shot extremely well. I put 3 rounds in the same spot on a target. Took it out to 450 yards in that 308, and was able to ring a 10-inch plate of steel a couple times. So it did well. As far as the external ballistics, it flew well. So it'll be interesting to see on the terminal side how it does at those lower velocities. Now, the width of it was 1.3 inches. We had an 8-inch total cavity as far as that main cavity. I'm not talking about that little bit towards the end. And so it went in and it had 4 inches left by the time on that gel block that it just pretty much the wound cavity disappeared. Now, when you look at that, so you have that wound cavity, and that's what they designed it to do. It's not so much that violent, huge open and then go down. They want it more consistent. And so you do kind of have that consistent tube looking wounding. Different bullets perform differently based on how they're designed. But what I'm worried about with that wounding size, because again, an ELD match, a Burger hybrid, something like that at same impact velocity would have much larger wounding, is as you dip down in velocity, that wounding size is going to go down. That's going to scale down. And so as far as long range is concerned, that kind of has me worried. Now, these are bullets that are designed to be shot fast. Light bullets, fast. The reason we started with a 308 is simply to test it at what I would consider more normal velocities. Most of these guys that are running them are running them in bigger cartridges, not a 308. Some do run these in 308, and so that'll kind of give you an idea of how it's performing. But when we get into the 300 Win Mag, I should be pushing them out somewhere around 3,800 feet per second. And because of the construction, you can do those higher velocities, but we'll have to see how much more that wounding is affected, how long that cavity is when it's going to be opening up more violently because of the increase in velocity, and we'll just have to kind of see. But your operational range is usually a little bit higher than what you would get with like a normal lead core with these because of the bullet construction. So we're going to continue to test. I'll run these in the 300. We're going to dive down into lower impact velocities, and we'll confine what the true range of this is and how it performs. So in the lead core world, these are right in there in what I would call normal velocities. As far as the monolithics, it's kind of getting towards the lower mid range as far as what I recommend people use these for. So it'll be interesting to continue through and see how these perform. So in conclusion, would I recommend these projectiles? I'm honestly not a fan of this type of bullet. However, if that is the particular type of projectile that you want to use, which is a monolithic that is going to shed petals and that shank continues, then this is probably the top bullet that I would recommend. From field and from this testing, this is the best I've seen as far as those few bullets that are out there that are of this similar design. Again, Lehigh is not in the picture because it's not really the same thing. But out of these, you know, Apex is the top that I've seen from this. So it's one of those things. Is it a phenomenal bullet? No. Is it out of that design, is it a good bullet? Yes. Would I recommend that over a good lead core bullet? Never. You know, monolithics aren't going to be competing with lead core realistically. But again, as far as that particular design of monolithic, that is the top out of those shed peddlers. So if you guys want to look into them, you know, you can look up Apex Afterburners, just Google him. You can go to his website. Really nice guy. If you guys want to call, you know, talk to him. He seems like, you know, very nice guy. We've had a lot of conversations and learning about his bullets and doing the research. So I'm looking forward to keep testing them though. A lot of guys, even though I don't really like monolithics because of the issues, I still enjoy testing them just to find out how each one works. And I get a lot of questions about guys that are wanting to use them. So it's one of those things that I'm really doing this for you guys, not for me. I mean, I buy these bullets myself. There's no deals or sponsorships or anything like that. You know, I'm just doing this out of my own pocket and time to help you guys learn about bullets and see both in the field and in testing how they perform, and that way you guys have an educated opinion and you guys can move forward and pick the correct bullet for you. So you know, if you guys want monolithics, you know, run monolithics, or if you're forced to. There are certain ones that are better than others. So if you choose a bullet like this, I recommend Apex as far as the shedding ones go. With the shank continuing, it's definitely the best I've seen, and I can't speak to reliability besides, you know, what I've seen from a few animals in this, but so far it seems reliable. I'll have to confirm on gel to actually see, and I'll probably hunt some hogs with it to test it on those. So Until next time, guys, appreciate all the support and love the comments, the dialogue that goes in. If you guys have any comments, drop them in the comments below and I'll try to get to you guys. Thank you guys for all your support. Everybody be safe out there. Happy hunting.
Hope you enjoyed this video, and make sure to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and turn on notification bell so you won't miss out on any future video, and happy hunting.